Welcome back to Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this week I really am delighted to be joined by Chris McElwain and ACSOM Rabbani. Chris and ACSOM, welcome back to Celtic State of Mind. I thought it was high time, ACSOM, that you came in and told us what was going on, because Chris and I can't figure it out. I think it's at this moment in time it's better to talk about the wide-ranging issues at the club rather than the surface level conversation that we could have if things were going well and we're coming up to a game against Rangers in the Cup and it's who's playing left back and all that stuff. So let's talk about some of the big issues that we're facing right now. We'll start off, ask them about Brendan Rodgers.
Yeah.
Where are you with Brendan?
Where I'm not with Brendan, and you both know I've been one of Brendan's biggest backers, the Brendometer. I've been high up on it for quite some time, even during that first season back when he was getting a lot of stick towards the end of last season, and even in the early stages of this season. But I'm at the stage where, and obviously we'll discuss the wider issues as to how we've got here, and I don't think that's on Brendan. I think we can all agree there are much bigger problems than Brendan. But at the stage we're at now, is Brendan in his current form and his current state of mind, and his kind of week-to-week decision-making, is he going to get us out of this mess? For me, I'm at the stage after yesterday, and even watching some of his interviews now, for the first time this season, first time since he's been back, that I'm thinking, for us to salvage this season, I think we need to make change. But there's a big but. What are the alternatives? And that change can only come if the alternatives are what we as a fan base and can have all been wanting for a while, is some progressive, proactive, proper decision-making leadership. If it's just a case of replacing them with a stopgap interim, Maloney or Kennedy, no disrespect to those kind of guys, but guys that have been there before, nothing's going to change. The season could just get even worse. So a lot to digest, a lot to consider, but where am I with Brendan at the moment? I don't think, keeping him along in the way things are going, I don't think we're going to get anywhere this season.
I think there's a question. Where is Brendan at with Brendan at the moment? Because you're looking at his demeanour. You're looking at the way he's engaging with the press and the media. You're looking at the kind of things he's coming out and saying. You're looking at the contradictory statements. Does he have the appetite to take this through to even to January?
Never been more motivated, Chris?
He's saying all the right things.
Yeah, but it's how he's saying them.
So this is the thing. I don't have an issue with us talking about the demeanour, because I think it's so obvious and it's so clear to us as fans. But the minute you speak about it, it's, oh, here we go, the body language experts. There was even a jibe at Tannadice last year where Rodgers was like, people talk about me, but they don't know me. You know, they were talking about what he was wearing, remember?
Yeah.
And
No belt, no shirt, tie. And
he ditches the suit and all this kind of stuff. We're football fans try to look for answers.
Yeah.
So obviously every nuance will be observed and studied. And there doesn't seem to be that bounce, Chris. There isn't that belief of, regardless of what the situation is, Brendan will sort it out.
Yeah.
A lot of people have been talking about COVID vibes. I'm not getting COVID vibes. For me, there was a series of unfortunate events during that time and things we could have avoided as well. Death by 1,000 cuts was COVID. This reminds me of Brendan's first season back, ACSOM.
I wish I could fully agree with you, because then it gives me more hope that we can turn things around, because I think I watched the show earlier with Quinny, and you were talking about, he went back to a core group of players that he trusted. I don't even think we've got that at the moment. Your CCVs and your spine of the team, Schmeichel, CCV, McGregor, who thought had his best kind of first half yesterday for a while. Jamesy Forrest, but we're 2 years down the line. Can we rely on Jamesy Forrest suddenly pulling up trumps again? Obviously, we then signed Kuhn and Ida in January. Again, January, with Brendan probably not being here next season, are the board going to give him money to spend when they know that he's only here for another 6 months? So I do see some similarities in COVID in terms of, we've got a squad right now. A lot of them don't want to be here, like they probably didn't want to do in COVID season. A lot of them the manager doesn't fancy and sees them as club signings, who he's now point scoring almost, where he doesn't want to give them a chance. The likes of Inamuras and Yamada, and he's wanting to stick to the guys who aren't performing. Rio Hotati, prime example. I don't know why he still continues to play week in, week out. So there's something going wrong here, which does remind me of COVID season, where it's just, you can only see things getting worse. The difference then was we were up against that season, strong Rangers, in terms of they went the season unbeaten, so we have to give them that. Different circumstances, obviously no crowds, which is probably a big part of why they performed. This season we're up against a not a very good Rangers and a Hearts side who are obviously showing good signs and are looking good, But my personal thoughts on that are I still feel that our biggest threat will still come from Rangers come the end of the season. I know a lot of people disagree, but have we got it in us to go on a consistent run? I think Hearts will falter at some point. Don't think Rangers are good enough to kind of go on a consistent run. Are we? And right now, the squad that we've got, I don't even think another manager coming in right now can get too much more, because I think the quality is not there in the team, and that's where I think January is going to be huge. But I just think the manager's checked out, and a lot of the players have checked out under this manager.
Right, I'll take that with the COVID with regards to players being unhappy, and I want to pick up on it, right? So we've thought we'd learned a lesson, right? With Edouard, Christie and Ayer, they were the three main players, weren't they?
Yep.
And you think to yourself, actually, when you look at it, there wasn't a lot of money kicking about at that time. People were hedging their bets. We had interest for Christie from Sampdoria. Arsenal were interested in Edouard. And who was it that was interested in Ayer? AC Milan.
Milan, if I remember right. Yeah.
Look at where they went and talk about an asset dropping in value and all this.
Yep.
That's what happened, but I don't think we were blameless. I think there would have been an outcry had we sold those three guys when we were going for the 10.
Given what was at stake.
Did we learn our lesson, Chris? Because what we're now seeing is what ASIM picks up on there. This is a massive concern of mine, right? So now and again, I think you're always going to have 2 or 3 unhappy players in a football squad because everybody wants you to play, right?
Yep.
You're always going to have that. But if you look at, let's say, the 4 players that come in that are not in the Europa League squad, so Simpson Pusey, Inamura, Shin Yamada, Callum Osmond, 4 guys come in, they're not going to be happy.
No.
The only reason Shin got a game against Hearts is because we're right down to the bare bones of the squad, right? They're unhappy. Then you look at the ones who we know were about out the door, Yang and Maeda. Then we can maybe look at guys that are in their 5th season at Celtic whose cycle has probably come or should have come to an end by now. They've probably been promised platform, step up, etc. Rio, Carter, Vickers. And before you know it, you've got 8 or 9 guys. And then you've got other players who simply are not getting a game, like Bernardo and Trusty. That's a massive part of your squad who might be unhappy, Chris, right? That is, for me, the biggest challenge for Brendan Rodgers. So you can talk about going back to experienced guys who might not actually be there. You're going to have to try and get a tune out of these people who are unhappy now. How do you do it?
Well, it's part of the manager's job, isn't it? I mean, look, you've got to manage the situation as it is. I agree with Asim on the sense that I think there are a lot of factors that are, have parallels to that COVID season. Things that were...
Have we booked for Dubai?
Not yet, but listen, there's time. There's time. We'll go along with them this time. A little ACSOM road trip. But it's up to the manager and the coaching staff to try and manage these situations. Now, look, the perception that we've got is that players have been brought in, right? Maybe according to a set of specifications that the manager's given, but the manager's not signing these players because he's referring to them as club signings. He's quoted as saying that, right? You can't argue with it. It's no matter what the chief executive officer says or anyone else says at Celtic. Brendan himself has said these are club signings. Yeah. Club signings are fine if you hit a certain requirement, right? The fact that these players, and we'll talk about the 4 that are omitted, Shin Yamada, Inamura, Osmond, and
GSP.
Yeah, Simpson Pusey has come in on loan. They're out the squad. He's basically saying, I cannot use your players. Shin played by virtue of the fact there was no one else, right? But he clearly doesn't see him as the man to lead the line. Otherwise, he'd be in the European squad. He's not. He's nowhere near it. So the manager's made an assessment on these players. And it's no fault of the players. Players have been signed. They've got an opportunity. 2 of the players, I think, have got aspirations to play in the national team in terms of the Japan squad. So the optics are really, really bad for a player. A player must be sitting there thinking, why have I made this move? What advice was he given? What assurances were the players given? Right?
The same assurances that Brendan was given for coming back.
This is my point. These assurances haven't come from the manager, right? So the manager's got to deal with a situation that is not of his making, right? People will point to Brendan and say, well, he's the one that's left them out. But Brendan's basically saying, but these guys aren't what I need. So you've got factors in terms of external factors like the recruitment process, which is obviously not working according to the manager's requirements. And you've got this build-up of maybe cliques within the squad. Players who are not playing, and it could be hurting their international aspirations or their future career aspirations. The devalue of players. So Rio Hatate, let's say, has aspirations to play in the English Premiership, for example, which I think he's been linked with that before. Based on his performances this season, he's not getting close to that.
Or you could expand on Rio and just say the Japanese contingent now.
Yes.
So you've got Maeda, whose locker was getting emptied. You've got Rio, who was spoken about in the same breath when he was talking about end-of-cycle players.
Yes.
And he mentioned Rio and Dyson. And you've got the two Japanese guys who have come over from the other side of the world who's not been used. So, again, we've spoken to Liam Carrigan about this. This is now becoming an issue with that market.
Yeah.
A market that we have tapped into and has been very kind to us.
We're burning our bridges.
We're burning our bridges, Chris, right? So there's lasting damage. And if your regime then goes into January and our answer is in Premier League 2 or in the Japanese league, they're not coming to us now.
No.
Because we've already...
Why would you? Why would they?
And you're talking about like players' value going down. Arne Engels, we signed him while he on the brink of being a Belgian international. I think he got his first call up the same day or a couple of days after. Started off brilliantly in terms of his Champions League debut, and everything was rosy there. And now, again, up until maybe the last couple of games, hadn't really featured at all this season. And now, like I've not been blown away by Arne Engels. I thought he'd have a bit of an improvement this season and last, and we've not seen it. So I'm not saying that nobody's really justifying their place in the team, but when that midfield trio of Rio, Engels and McGregor blatantly hasn't been working week in, week out, yet Bernardo's nowhere to be seen. McKinnon comes in here and there again, hasn't really shown up trumps either. But why is he persisting with the same guys? And I think, you talked about what can Brendan do in man management, but calling players, now I know he's trying to deflect, but the whole Ferrari and Honda Civic thing is not going to help.
Apologies to any Honda Civic drivers, but
that was my first ever car, so I didn't know how to take double offence on that.
What did he try to do with that, Asim? Because anybody in any walk of life, right, knows that your team has to be on side,
Aye.
right? You rely on your team being on side. And even though he has come in and said, you know what, it was misinterpreted to a degree, right? At that point, the damage is done.
Yeah, and we've spoke about it at length, how meticulous Brendan is with the media in terms of his words. He doesn't miss a trick. Everything he says is he's thought about over and over. You can tell when he does his jokes, he's thought about it and his timing, and he starts laughing at his own jokes. But even with a comment like that, it's been in the making. And he obviously waited till a really bad defeat to kind of be like, right, I'll throw that one in there and try and deflect blame again. And I know he tried to say he was talking about the speed. He's not. He's talking about the quality of the players. He's not got the quality anymore. The guys that you need to get a tune out of these guys that you're basically saying aren't good enough. And in it, I know you could try to justify it again after the Sturm Graz game, saying you need to be harsh to be clear sometimes. Fair enough, but it's clearly not working, because 3 days later, the mentality was weak again of these players. And this is not the bigger problems at Celtic are not Brendan's making. I fully backed him. I remember after the Kairat first leg, he did a really kind of strong interview where he was blatantly saying the club know what we need. Everyone kind of backed him at that point.
Yeah.
I remember it was he kind of got everyone on side with one of his interviews. I don't remember which one exactly. And everyone thought, right, okay, we're letting this guy down badly. But given now what he's got, I feel like he's been a bit stubborn. He's almost point scoring with some of his selections and his decisions. And I just don't think he has got. He's saying he's as motivated as ever. I don't think he is. And I think he's going to continue to make decisions which aren't probably the best for the club. It's probably again to prove his point. Now, I didn't sign these guys. You have brought them in. You didn't give me the players in the positions I want. Tonekti's not going to play on the right because he's a left winger. You didn't get me a right winger. I'm going to stick to what I'm doing.
Yep.
And even if
That's a good point, because of what he said yesterday.
he was quite firm in that.
He was.
Isn't usually what any manager
snippy.
he was the same with when he spoke about Murray as well. Why did you play Murray over Trusty? And he said, well, I wanted his right side and I wanted right side. Yeah, it's like, okay, but that,
deal with what you've got. And we said something a few weeks ago, and you said we need to now see Brendan park all that. As much as fans and everyone, we're going to carry on the fight, whether it's everything about the protests and all that, and about the shambles, we're not going to brush it under the carpet. But as a manager, you have to brush it under the carpet for the time being and get on with what you've got. I don't think he's capable of doing that. I think it's nagging at him, and I think it's going to continue to nag at him to the point where I don't think he's got that in him now to be like, right, I've got what I've got. I don't think he's ever been that kind of manager. I think he does need certain tools to work with to get the best out of it. And I don't think this current group, he feels he can, and they probably don't feel that he wants them, and that's why we're seeing what we're seeing.
Yeah, I always think when a manager comes out publicly and slates these players, or is perceived to slate these players publicly, it tends to be the point of no return.
Yeah.
Sometimes for a manager, the position can become really, really untenable. I think you look at an Alex Ferguson, for example, apparently one of the toughest managers in the dressing room, but it was in the dressing room. He very rarely came out and slated these players publicly, even after a bad performance. That, I think, when you come out publicly, players hear it, players' families hear it, their friends hear it, it gets passed around. That surely starts to play a part in a player's mentality. I'm thinking, this guy doesn't rate us. Why the hell should we go out there and give him an extra 10% or 15%, right? Now, they'll probably be aware of some of the factors, some of the restrictive factors that the manager and the coaching staff are having to deal with. But ultimately, they're players. They're looking for support from their manager, and if they're not getting that, they're not going to give them his best.
One last one on that as well. You need to know your players, and we've maybe had those kind of players in the past that would react to that.
Yep.
Your core group, like you said. But now we're not. We've got the likes of new guys that have come in. Johnny Kenny up front, Negrin, Tunekti. These, we don't know if they've got the mentality that can handle that kind of criticism and that kind of public slating almost. Whereas in the past, maybe, Carter Vickers, McGregor, these guys are winners and he used that to try and rally them. I don't think with this group, we've got that mentality within them, because anytime we're going 1 and 2 goals behind, I'm pretty sure all of us yesterday knew at 3-1 that game's done.
Was done, yeah.
Same the week before.
It's gone.
But that goes back again to the recruitment, right? So to take it away from Brendan Rodgers for a second, he's going to look for these type of characteristics, these leaders, these winners that he's had the benefit of being able to use in the past.
Yeah.
So the club's bringing in players that don't have that ability to react to going behind in a game, or don't have that ability to give that extra 10 or 15% on the park when the chips are down, then that's a failure in recruitment. Brendan's saying, you've given me players, but look, I needed players that could rise to the challenge yesterday. I didn't have them.
And why did Ange used to always want to have a personal phone call with half of these players that he would bring in? As he wanted to know their character.
Yes.
He wanted to know, do you want to be here?
The stuff that's not in a system.
Aye.
The things that you cannot gauge until you've seen that person in action.
Well, look, me and Asim working in sort of semi-similar industries, right? I've got to hire people to come in and work in my team. I don't do it based on data. That'll be maybe the first port of call. So we'll tick that box.
I guess I'm in the room.
But I get them in the room.
Yep.
And then you interview. That's the way most recruitment works. Why is a football club which depends on those sort of characteristics not doing that?
The winning mentality, the personality, the character. I think there are teams in the past, I could ask you about a Neil Lennon side first time round, about personality. And I've spoken to a lot of the guys who were involved in that team that played for Lenny. And they do talk about them having a personality. Yeah. And the way that Neil Lennon could actually motivate them. I think we found second time round with the cliquiness, etc., of certain players, he could react exactly the same way as him, right? And not get the reaction. I think we've seen it with Ferencváros, remember?
Yeah.
Just right. Guys in that dressing room haven't wanted to be here for 6 months.
Yep.
No reaction whatsoever because we're in a different age. Aye. So Neil Lennon Mark 1 and Neil Lennon Mark 2, unless you adapt your style to that new dressing room, you're not getting the same response as you would from a Joe Ledley or a Tony Stokes or a Charlie Mulgrew. So I think we've seen that. You talk about personalities or characteristics of a team. Ange Postecoglou's team, what the personality and the character of that team was. I'm finding it really difficult to describe this Brendan team positively.
Yeah.
It's very much, it's boring and tedious to watch. It's all about keep ball. It's the, side-to-side horseshoe of death. We've heard all the different descriptions of it, and they're all negative. There is no never say die. Like you say, see the 2-0 game, what I found interesting when Simon Murray's taken off it for Dundee, him and the manager are high-fiving it. Yes. Like, we've won this. They're not coming back for this. So other teams can smell blood as well.
Absolutely.
And there was time for us to pull that back at that stage. 3-1, I asked the question the other day, in fact, after the game with Sean, when Hearts go 3-1 up, do you have any belief, any faith that we're coming back?
Two of us were just shaking our heads.
It's like nothing.
And again, that gives me COVID year similarities, because I remember the amount of times 60 minutes gone, we were maybe a couple of goals down. You just felt done.
I know.
And that I'm getting that with this group.
Nobody's giving you the belief. Now, I think you're right to link it into recruitment.
Yeah.
Right? So you need to have a situation, before we get into data systems and stuff, you need to have a situation where everything's on a cycle, right? So if a player comes to the end of that cycle and we have to keep them because we haven't done our job previously, we bring in quality replacement, your Edward for your Dembele, your Johnson for Juranovic. That's all we're asking, right? Bring in the replacement before the guy leaves, right? And if you've not done that, then you're having to squeeze more out of Daizen Maeda. You're having to squeeze more out of probably Carter Vickers, probably Rio Hatate. So that's recruitment. That's bad recruitment,
Yes.
bad squad management. You can't say that's on Brendan. Right?
No.
He's having to deal with it and he's having to manage it. You then have to replace the quality that leaves the football club. Now, I was looking at the amount of goals that we have lost over the piece, and I'm going to just go over this again. This was earlier on when I was talking to Quinny, right? So you can talk about managing a situation. How can you manage yourself out of a 125 goal deficit? So if you look at the players that we've lost, either through selling them, right, or injury, you've got last season, Kyogo, and it wasn't a prolific season, and it was half a season, but 16 goals or assists.
Yeah.
You've got Nicholas Kuhn, 36 goals and assists. Ida, 21. Those three guys are gone, right? Now, you might say, oh, but we have brought players in. Yeah, but when the players you're talking about are Iheanacho, right, out the transfer window as a free agent, and Shin Yamada, they're not going to hit these figures, I'm afraid, right? I mean, there's an argument to say Iheanacho, if we can keep him fit, might get near to 20 goals. Then you're looking at the two guys who are injured right now, who gave us goals, and it says Jota, 7, Maeda, 45. So last season, 125 goals, right, from 5 players that are not playing at the moment, either through us selling them or them being unfit.
Yeah.
125 goals.
And look, make no mistake, that's a real challenging role for anybody in recruitment to replace that, right? I mean, but that's what you should.
We've not even tried.
Well, that's the point, right? You talked. I think the Iheanacho one is interesting, right? Iheanacho, for me, based on his profile, does have the requisite quality to do a real good job for us.
Yeah.
Why was he not our first or number one target? Why is he getting brought in on a free after the window because we couldn't get what we believe is a number one target or number 2 target, number 3 target? So these guys, Iheanacho, Tunekte, who I think, again, is a player who can come in and make an impact.
Yeah.
Why were they not top of the list? Why were they not done at the start of the window? Why were they not identified early? Right?
Yeah.
Recruitment doesn't start when
No,
the
apparently
window...
Balaquisha was on the radar for 18 months. Chris.
18 months, right? And he looks completely, at the moment, with the greatest respect for the player, looks completely incapable of performing in this team. Just looks like a deer in the headlights, you know, and that's a real shame. But there's so much evidence to say recruitment did not work as it was intended. And, you know, you talked about Ange earlier. Ange brought in Kyogo, Maeda. He brought in players that he knew he could get a tune out of. He knew them. He knew those players, knew their character, he knew their personality, he knew what would make them comfortable on the pitch, he knew how to extract the best from them. I've got no issue with Brendan Rodgers going to his book and saying, I've worked with Kasper Schmeichel, so I'll bring him in. I know he can bring. I know Iheanacho, he's done a good job for me before, I can bring him in. But he shouldn't be doing that right at the end of the process. Yeah. That should be part of the process. And the problem is it seems to me that he's getting delivered players that whatever instructions he's given him, whatever way he wants to play, they're not suited. It's square pegs for round holes.
You know the issue with that, Chris, because I have no issue with Kasper Schmeichel coming to the club or Iheanacho, right? The issue is he only knows one market, Brendan. He only knows one market, and it just so happens it's the most expensive market on the planet, right? So the only guys we're getting are guys who are 38-year-old or guys who are out of contract. That's the, you know, we were linked to Jamie Vardy. That's the type of player we're going to get from that market, or we're going to get someone on the start of that cycle, like Simpson Pusey, who is a promising defender at Man City. We've got a relationship with the City group. So you're never going to get anybody in between that. It's going to be starting their career or ending their career. I have no issue with Ants coming in with knowledge of 2 markets and tapping into them either.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as you say, that needs to be one element of your approach.
Just one element.
If you look at when Ange came in, obviously there was the Japanese market, and then there was Aaron Moy, but in between that you've got Giacomakis, Abada, all at a good age, Juranovic, Matt O'Reilly. You know, that wasn't just one market. Whatever was going on then was working. But then we've just reverted to time, and we, you know, for decades we've had bad transfer windows. You know, I remember after we went to Seville under Martin O'Neill, we all knew that was such an opportunity for Celtic then to progress and take ourselves to that next step. And I think the year after we might have signed Michael Gray or in the window, and that was it. So we've had history of this, but for me that summer transfer window there has got to be the worst, the most shambolic state of affairs in my lifetime supporting Celtic. It's simple. Forget even the fact that the replacements weren't good enough or whatever. It's simple math. Look at our situation in the right wing option. You know, and like you said, we've had to get Iheanacho after the transfer window's closed. right now what I'd give just to have Adam Ida back in the squad, because the prospect of Johnny Kenny and Shin Yamada being our strike force, going to cup semi-finals against Rangers, going to huge Europa League games and games against Hearts there, it's just not good enough. So obviously the manager's sitting there thinking, what is this shit show?
Can I ask you a question, Asim? You mentioned Ida. Now, Ida was much maligned, by some fans. Brendan Rodgers has said this was not a player
Who wanted
generated transfer. Why did we sell him? Seriously, why did we sell him?
We were offered a figure which was really appealing again to the club, because probably none of us expected that we'd get near recouping that 9 million. And that's probably been a stick that's been used against Brendan, that we spent the 9 million on Ida because Brendan wanted him. We spent the 11 on Arne Engels, spent the 6 million Trusty, who, by the way, the three of them were huge contributors in us getting to the Champions League playoff.
Absolutely.
But for some reason, that's probably the reason we weren't backed again this summer, is because they valued those players as not being bang for your buck, but they were.
So it's return on investment based decision then.
I just think it's short-sighted because it's such a small sample size, right? Now, we try our best to get as much information as we can through speaking to everybody from journalists to agents to mothers of players to players and we speak to anybody to try and get information. And the way I understand it is those guys, and the CEO of our football club, when he's no shrugging and he answers questions. So the way I understand it is those guys we've mentioned there, the biggies last year. People could say, oh, but we spent 26 million and look what we got. I'm far more looking at the result of what we got rather than looking at the individual. The result of what we got was a double, should have been a treble, right? On another day, it would have been a treble and progress in the Champions League. That's what you got for your 26 million.
Yep.
So let's stop focusing on the individual ineffectiveness of this player or that player, right?
Absolutely.
But I think Asim's right. I think we've thought, oh, wait a minute. And we've absolutely panicked into a point where we've gone back to what we used to do, where it's don't go over 5 million, keep the profile under 24. This is the wage bracket, which is going to be a massive issue.
Yeah.
Because if you're doing you're going through all the different criteria on any system and it comes to wages, and this is data recruitment, and you say, right, we're not prepared to spend over 20 grand a week, let's say it is, because it's not going to be much more than that, generally speaking, for a player, right? Loads and loads of your search data just drops off the page.
It drops, yeah, absolutely.
It just drops off the page.
You narrow your pool so much.
Yeah.
And I think it's a problem, right? Look, if you look at the Adam Ida example, I think Asim's 100% right. I think they looked at Adam Ida and thought, we'll never get more money for him than we will right now. So for me, it was all about trying to recoup as much of that and saying, wow, got ourselves out up a hole there.
I don't think there was even a thought as to, but what about what this does for our striking position?
Yeah,
I don't know what happens next season when we're back in the Champions League, he's scoring for Ireland. I just think it's so short-termism.
That we should have said, that should have been the benchmark that season. Okay, it was a double, it wasn't a treble, should have been, I agree with you, European progression that we made. And it was progress on the park, right? It really was progress in Europe. It was great. We all enjoyed the run to Bayern Munich with a few results, but that's the nature of that competition. But that just to put a line in that and said, right, that's where we're at. How do we take it up to the next? Just go one round further this season. That should have been the target. What will it take? We did that with this level.
Or even just maintain it.
Yeah. Well, you just say we did it with this level of quality. So let's build on top of that. Just give us another player or two players that just make that squad that little bit better.
I'm going to ask you then, right? Because I think there's a big thing around 10 with Celtic fans.
Right.
And we need to get away from 10 men winning the league, stopping the 10 and then going for the 10. That's all parochial.
Yeah.
That's all Rangers. Forget all that, right? It should now be 10 Champions League games a season. And that should be the target.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you the question then, lads, right? So I do think we've regressed with the ambition.
Yeah.
Having looked at those three individuals, for some reason, we've absolutely panicked. We've bottled it. At the end of the season, Nicholas Kuhn wants to leave and Dyson Maeda wants to leave. We know that he emptied his locker. Callum McGregor said that. I mean, there's some wee grenades getting thrown here.
It's a crazy thing to come out and say publicly. It's just, who's advising these guys?
I'm going to let the fans know what's going on here, right? So let's say between the two of them, and I'm just judging this on what we've got previously for big players. Between the two of them, let's say we get 30 million quid. Is that reasonable when you consider we got 17 for Kuhn? So it'd probably be even more than that. Would you be happy if we took that 30 to 35 million quid and bought another 3 players, as we did, Ida, Engels, Trusty, that type of player, that calibre, that profile,
Yep.
right? Would you be much happier sitting here if that's all the business we did, right? And we did sell 2 of our star assets, star players, but we've brought in 3 guys. There's a bit of intent. Would we have got past Kairat, Almaty? Would we be playing Champions League football?
I'll take this first. Yeah, in my opinion, if we'd done the business nice and early, and we'd done that business so you're replacing the quality that you're losing, and you're adding one on top of it, that for me is progress. That for me is making incremental progress, and it's showing a level of ambition that matches or exceeds what you did the previous season. So yes, that for me is a model that works, right? Now, that's leaving all the other recruitment issues aside. But I think if we do that, we do the business early, we get the guys in, allow the manager to work with them, then we go into the Kairat game far better prepared than what we did. We remove such a big element of risk. Doesn't mean we would have got through, right? It could still have had a stinker. But you reduce the risk down to a level that say, okay, I feel much more comfortable going into this match.
What do you reckon, Asim? I know, listen, it's all hypothetical, right?
I think 100%, because I think as a fan base and just generally across football now, player power is so big. You very rarely now see players who want away, not getting away, right? So I don't think we anymore, you've seen it with Matt O'Reilly, we've seen it with Jota the year before. Any of our players recently, Juranovic, Jack, anyone who wants away and they do get away, I don't think as a fan base now we're like, oh, why have we sold them?
Yeah.
Other than maybe, no, and I was going to say Kyogo, it's not even about, because I think you've seen that now, when players want away, you have to, otherwise, I don't think it's like the olden days, or I say olden days, but even times gone by, I love to, times gone by where players will suck it up and just still, I think nowadays there is so much about players getting what they want, and if they're in a sulk, I don't think you're going to get the best out of them. We've seen it in the COVID season with our players, and I think we're seeing it again now. So 100%, if those 2 were to go and we were to replace adequately, and that was a problem with Kyogo in January, no issue with selling him if he really wants to go.
Yeah.
But make sure you've got your replacements in.
Yeah.
What we're doing now is keeping players who didn't want to go and selling Adam Ida who wanted to stay. So it's in reverse. The guy who was happy to stay, like Brendan said, and Brendan probably felt that he could have been hungry and got more out of him, we decided to sell him for money reasons. But the other 2 who wanted away, or I don't know what happened with the Yang situation, but we managed to just hold on to, and we're seeing that they're not producing now. And why would they? Because they feel let down. They feel that they were promised moves, and we've seen that before with Moussa Dembele. Remember, he was promised a move and went in a sulk when he didn't get it. I think we just don't know how to handle these situations at all. And had we, you look at teams like, I know people have referenced them so much this season, but Club Brugge are a great example. Why? Because we played them last season. We've seen the kind of level they're at, similar to us. Similar, playing in a league again, similar to ours. Obviously stronger, the Belgian league is. And then we've seen them this season. They lost a lot of their big players from that good Champions League run they had last year. I think one of them went to Milan, the midfielder, for 25 million. So they sold a lot of their players, but what they did was recruit with 5 or 6 really good signings early on, to the point where they pummeled Rangers. What was it? 9-1. I lost count, right?
It was a demolition. Yeah.
But they were ready-made, prepared for the Champions League qualifiers again, and they're in it again, and they're doing okay. I think 1 win, 2 defeats. But that's how you do things properly. You prepare, and that's just all we've been asking from Celtic, is be prepared for these qualifiers. Give yourself, for a board that's so risk averse, it's almost the opposite.
Yeah,
because you're actually minimizing your chance.
The risk. Yeah, it's funny because it reminds me of one of the shows we were doing, I think, in the post-season, as the window was open. And across multiple 12, 30 bulletins, we were all talking about the fact that, okay, we know what the board have to do, we know what the club has to do, we know how we need to prepare. Surely there's no way we'll fall into the trap of not signing players ahead of the qualifiers. We all said it. We said there's no way. I said, fans are feeling good. It was a, good European campaign. Okay, season didn't end well, but overall good season. So everybody's feeling kind of positive. How do we go and build on that? And I remember, I think it might have even been myself that said it. I think it said, there'll come a point of no return in this, that if they don't do the business, all that good faith, all that good work that was done last season, the fans are going to start getting itchy feet. They're going to start getting nervous. Yeah. The squeaky bum time is going to start happening. But I don't think even at that point, any of us thought it would happen. Despite all the precedents that's been set in previous seasons, you're always thinking, nah, don't not do it again. Yeah. Don't not do it again. They'll get it right.
You know what changed my mind on that? Being in the room with the CEO and the CFO, right? So you're right. You think to yourself, Brendan will sort this. You think a club the size of Celtic have got so much stuff behind the scenes sorted out that it's absolutely just like a fine-tuned machine and all this kind of stuff. It's not. It absolutely is not. So when we go into the January party or discussion, I have no confidence as I sit here right now. I think the AGM next month is absolutely key, not only to this season, but to our future, our immediate future, because we are careering over a cliff as a football club, right? Everything that board has got, they've inherited. This is something that we all need to be aware of, by the way. They didn't build the stadium. They didn't create an inbuilt advantage of 10,000 seats in that stadium. They didn't build up the season ticket uptake to 54,000 plus a waiting list, plus hospitality waiting list. They never done any of that. That was in place. This board has inherited all of that stuff, right? And they've inherited a global fan base that they've never ever tapped into, but it allows them to get brand and merchandise deals. They don't go out there and find Adidas because they're so good at their job.
Celtic sells itself, right?
Celtic sells itself, absolutely, right? So that club, that board, and the members who I've met on a personal level are not fit for purpose. This is my biggest concern. Now, there's a layer below that. There's an even deeper layer, which is the Dermot Desmond question. But in terms of January, the January business is being dealt with by the contracts guy, right, and the finance guy. Who else would you want to do your business? No, these two guys. There's an incompetence question there, right? And that's why we're overplaying for players and we're low-balling teams and we're missing out on top targets. So even if, guys, this is my worry, and we don't have this in place, but even if we had an all-singing, all-dancing recruitment system in place, so we're tapping into the data, we've got the scouting, the gaffer is prepared to look in the whites of the eyes of the players and say, I want a word with you. I want to know if you've got the personality and the mentality to play for my football team. Even if we had all that sorted, we still to do the deal.
Yes.
And that is my biggest concern. You're still to send Michael Nicholson and Chris Mackay into a room to do the deal.
To do the
So
negotiation.
even if you got all that bit right and the football department, the recruitment department and everything was absolutely clean as a whistle, it's going to fall down because these guys are not capable.
And this is a problem, right? Look, there's nothing personal. I think we always state that. We you know, we're all Celtic fans. We believe that people at the club are Celtic fans. And I'm sure they want deep down the best for the club. But you're right, it's a competence and a capability thing, right? Nobody's going to ask me to fly a plane, right? I'm not qualified, right? If I'm a mate of the pilot and the pilot goes down sick and says, Chris, you're going to fly the plane, passengers are not going to be happy with that, right? So you know what? I don't do that. I don't fly the plane.
We're going from Honda Civics to planes.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll go to the boats next, right? But the point I'm making is that Michael Nicholson was, for me, I imagine, probably a very capable and competent lawyer. That's his field, that's his background, from what we understand, right? From what we understand. I've not met him, you have, right? A lawyer cannot jump into a CEO role, might grow into it over the course of 10 years, right? But not under the kind of pressure that you get at a football club.
And by the way, go and earn your spurs somewhere else. Well, and come in as a ready-made CEO.
Absolutely. I don't want people lucking into jobs at my football club, unless it's me, of course. If anybody wants to give me the manager's job, I'll happily do it, right? That's fine, well, qualifications aside. But the point is, you want people in that have got a proven track record in the role that they are being recruited for, right? I don't want, an ex-player.
That's world-class basics. That.
Well, absolutely, but I don't want, even if it's a great, very fond player, a Joe Hart, for example, right? Joe Hart coming out of his player career, for me, doesn't go and become a goalkeeping coach. Might have a lot of knowledge, might have a lot of wisdom to impart, could be good to have at the club, but he shouldn't be the head goalkeeping coach. I want somebody that's been a head goalkeeping coach for 10 years and has proven that they're the best goalkeeping coach out there. That's how these decisions should be made. We should be what we talk about profiling players, we should be profiling the background staff in exactly the same way and say, what are your qualifications, right? Give me your CV. How many boxes does this check? Now sit down in front of me and tell me, what's your strategy for this club for the next 10 years? What are you going to do to earn this? And I won't speculate about his wage, but I believe it's substantial. How are you earning that?
Talking about CEO?
Yes.
Public record.
Well,
900 grand last year.
900 grand. What are you doing for that 900 grand? What targets are you setting? How are you going to be measured over the next year, 5 years, 10 years? What are you going to bring? And if you don't hit those targets, what's the consequence there? What accountability are you taking, right? At the moment, we don't see any accountability. We don't see any measurement of success. What we hear is their strategy is to be world class, not a strategy. That's your objective. How do you get there? That's your strategy, right? If you've got a CEO and a chief financial officer who don't understand the difference between an objective and a strategy, not fit for purpose, right? That's a fact.
Yeah, and we spoke about that after the meeting,
Yes.
Chris, because it's almost like the buzzword that they go back to, you know, this world class. Absolutely great. That'd be fantastic, right? How about going back to the 10, let's be Champions League class here, right? And let's get the 10 games a season, Asim.
I think accountability, what you said there, Chris, that's the number one thing, and that's why this all just, we can talk about it as much as we want, and we have, and we all want change, but until they actually, they see it themselves and they don't, we've seen that in their statements, we've seen that at the meeting you were at, they don't think they're doing anything wrong. They don't think there's anything flawed in what...
Because they're not measured.
Yeah.
Who's measuring their success?
They're marking their own homework.
Yes, exactly.
Until that changes, we're not going to see change, because from their point of view, they're doing everything correctly. They're meeting all the objectives. They're, as you said, they think they are world class in every aspect. And I almost think that they feel that these kind of seasons will come, and they almost account for it or prepare for, not even prepare for it, but as far back even as I remember, obviously under previous leadership, but Celtic almost have this thing where 2 or 3 seasons and then they press the brakes, and they almost just accept what might come after that. Now, if you look at it even under O'Neill, you know, we had the chance to really hit home from there, press the brakes under Strachan, 2 or 3 good seasons, and then we had the whole Willow Flood, Stephen Fletcher debacle. Then under, obviously we got Lennon in, but we had obviously no challenge at all. That's the only reason we got the 9, because we had no challenge. But even in between then, there was
100% Asim, and that I think as Celtic supporters we need to accept that up until the point of 2012, it was past the parcel from us winning the league in '98 under Wim Jansen, right up to Neil Lennon taking the job.
Under strong squads and strong management.
And even under Lennon, who I didn't catch all of his stuff yesterday that everyone's been talking about, but did I hear you saying you can't always go on an upward trajectory or something like that?
That's the big quote,
I remember Lennon complaining about the same things when he was in charge. I remember that it was in the aftermath of Shakhtar Karagandhi. We managed to stumble through. James Forrest scored a last minute goal, I'm pretty sure, and got us through. But the whole build up to that was the same issues. We weren't strengthening. We replaced. We sold Gary Hooper, didn't replace. Lennon kind of had his outburst then. He left probably for the same reasons. After the,
As far as he could take it, he said,
and thought he was kind of move past that level. Wanted a shot in England. He complained about all the same things. Now he's don't know, he's completely changed his tune in some of the stuff he's saying. But again, throughout, we only won that 9 in a row because there was no real challenge, because the club were making the same mistakes even in that period. We were never strengthening. We almost always press the brakes after 2 or 3 good years where you feel things can progress. We got to that knockout game against Juve. After the year we beat Barca and stuff. Again, everyone thought we've got a good squad here. Let's progress. Didn't do it.
Never do it.
The following season, finished 4th in the group stages, and we're back to square one. It's a common cycle that keeps repeating itself, and I don't see the change happening.
With regards to the cycle, Asim, right, and that word trajectory, upwards trajectory, this is Celtic language. This is coming straight from Dermot Desmond. David Lowe said he takes you to the top of the hill, he takes you back down again. To the grand old Duke of Cork, he called him, right? And it's so true, but why? Why do that? What's the point in doing it?
It's almost so they have that dip, and they can be the saviours again for a bit, where they can lift it. So when Ange comes in and things are great, everyone's singing the praises. Michael Essien was getting the praise, so they like that, and then it goes down again, and then they can be the ones to lift it again.
Right, I'll give you an example in terms of football, fan engagement and mood and momentum. So St Johnstone go down, and in the seasons that resulted in them going down after their Scottish Cup exploits and all that under Cam Davidson, crowds were down, merch was down, everything was down. They're now selling more tickets for their games because they're winning. They're back on that trajectory, right, that we're talking about. So it's going down. And they think as a business over a period of 5 to 7 to 10 years, it's worth taking a dip, because see the rise, it makes it all worthwhile financially. See, as football fans, I will never, ever buy into that, right? Because what I want from Celtic is I want us to take last season and say, look, disappointed we never got the treble, but we have had an insight into this new makeup of the Champions League, and see that magical 10, that should be part of your KPI, that should be part of your target, right? Every single season. How am I going to make that work? Well, let's make sure that we get recruitment right. But the issue we've got at the minute, guys, for me, is that we're almost starting from scratch, right, in terms of recruitment. So what have we got? Everybody knows what Hearts have got, right? Everybody knows about Tony Bloom. Everybody knows about Jamestown analytics, right? What's Celtic got? We've got the football doctor, guys. We've got Paul Tisdale, right?
I couldn't tell you
Now,
a thing about-
seriously,
I couldn't tell you a thing about him.
right? But this is where we're hanging our hats, right? We're hanging our hats on Paul Tisdale, right, to sort all this out. So what's his track record? What do we know about him? What's his previous roles where he's managed to find a Matt O'Reilly and he's managed to find a Carl Starfelt and a Leo Abada and all the players you were talking about somehow, Asim, that we managed to find because we were doing something right then for a couple of windows. We found so many players. We had to,
Yep.
right? And there were so many moving parts to that because then Ange had to be able to manage them instantly, hitting the ground running. You know, that became the cliche. And it worked, right? Why not continue to have the relationship with the agencies that produced most of the guys you've mentioned beyond the Japanese players and beyond Aaron Moy? Why not continue to tap into that, tap into the specialist knowledge that the manager's got, but also have an incredible data-driven recruitment system? Now, when we're talking about Tony Bloom, he's devised a system. You can buy a membership to that system. You can tap into that database, right? He probably wouldn't sell it to Celtic, which is fine. But there's other systems
Yeah.
as good as, if not better. And when you're sitting with 77 million quid in the bank, right? It's not always about just chucking money at the situation. The longer term, medium to longer term, is to make sure that we've got the best system we can afford
Absolutely.
to ensure that it's given us the best chance. Now, I do have my concerns about who you're sending in to do the deal,
Aye.
but we need to have the best system and we don't have that. So Paul Tisdale is it for Celtic right now. We need to start looking at that side of things. And the very fact that when I say, what's he done? Most people will be like, no, sure. You can go online and see who he's managed, etc., etc. But what's his track record at identifying talent? Because he's the guy, apparently. This is what we were told us in the meeting. He identifies the talent. The manager signs them all off.
Right.
And I said, right, because they're not going to admit that the manager doesn't sign them all off, because the manager probably got his knuckles wrapped for calling them club signings because he changed his tune after that, right? I asked, is it functional then? Does it function properly when at least 4 of the guys that the talent spotter has identified aren't in the Europa League squad?
Yes.
Does that function? And the answer is yeah.
No.
They're happy with the system, Asim. They're happy.
Yeah, and that's the problem. They don't see any flaws in it. They don't see that it's clearly not worked. I have no clue what Paul Tisdale's been doing. Like as you said, nobody knows anything about him. When I remember when we got him, there was so much chat about how he's going to change things up and how he's came with this pedigree of really changing the way recruitment works for within the previous places he's been. We've got no evidence of it at all.
No.
If anything, it's getting worse and worse. What about the other thing as well, David Pleat? What we got him in? What's he doing? There's no kind of communications as to what these.
No.
We bring these people in.
We can
What
only
is it?
surmise
What's the
that
structure?
he's the guy that's identified the young English talent.
Well, why can't they give us an insight into their organisational structure, right? It's not confidential. Most,
On the whiteboard.
yeah, with post-it notes.
Yep.
Most companies will reveal that. They'll reveal their leadership team and say, this person does this, does this.
What about the Hearts bounce at the moment? Big part of that, Chris, huge, because he's talking to the fans. He's selling them a vision.
It's not rocket science. He's not doing anything incredibly innovative.
He's got the buy-in, isn't he?
He's just got the buy-in. He's recognised, I've got a brand here and I want to sell it. So how do I do it? I'm going to get the customers on side by doing the things that they want me to do. And the things they want me to do is tell them what our strategy is and then demonstrate how effective that is and then actually start showing it on the park. It's not difficult. It's a sequential process. Bring the right people in to do their jobs, give them a mandate, tell them exactly this is your role and responsibility and here is what we expect you to deliver. How you do it is down to you, but this is what we expect you to deliver. And by the way, in every 3 months, we're going to check, where are you with that?
I think what's happening at Hearts is good for Scottish football.
We set a template, right?
We've all said we want a competitive league, and we've been. I enjoyed it yet last season when Aberdeen started off well, but what we also want is that to raise Celtic standards,
Yes.
not us coming down the way, and dropping our standards. So again, with Hearts this season, it remains to be seen how it's going to go. I don't know what you guys take on it. For me, I don't see it lasting the full season, but I've not got nothing to base that on other than the fact that in my lifetime I've never seen another club do it.
Well, you've also got Aberdeen last season,
Yeah.
right, where it was promising, but it did tail off. And we appreciate the difference in resources and the difference in, profile, if you like. But what we shouldn't do is devalue what Hearts are doing.
No, definitely not. And like you said, there's There's evidence there with Jamestown Analytics, what he's done at USG, what at Brighton. So there's evidence there to support the fact that this might be something that they can sustain. We can see already some of the signings. I think a couple of their players would walk into our team right now.
Oh, Casareras, yes.
Casareras and Braga, both look like they're being included. Apparently the midfielder, the Brazilian Aju that came on, he's meant to be a real player as well. So, no, fair play to them. And this is what we've been crying out for from these other clubs for years. But at the same time, we're not doing it. We're not doing the identifying and the recruitment, and that's what's the frustrating thing.
2 years ago, not that long. In fact, 2 years ago last week, we had the St. Roch centenary again. You'll remember it was a phenomenal event, and Brendan Rodgers turned up at half-time, pulled back a 2-goal deficit. I wish we could do that these days. And
Jerry Taylor and goal.
Yeah, that's right, Jerry. It was Jerry's fault, yeah. According to Paddy Lavery. So, what the point is of me saying that is around about that time, there was a presentation given in relation to recruitment, data-driven recruitment systems, and I was blown away at the time. Not that I didn't buy into data, not at all. As I say, we had been talking to Alan Morrison for years on a Celtic State of Mind, on a wee show called A Celtic State of Mind that Alan spoke about, and some of the stuff he came away with blew my mind. Some of it, strengthened what I already believed. Other things was just surprising, but it was interesting. And Celtic were given the same presentation that I was given. Peter Lowell was given the same presentation that I was given because Celtic were basically offered this system.
Right.
They didn't take it. So we could be getting a subscription for Y Scout. I could go home and have a subscription for Y Scout.
Of course.
Chris. We need to take things up various levels when it comes to recruitment. I guess the third part of this, so we've spoken about Brendan, we've spoken about the board and recruitment mainly, because that is coming home to roost, the recruitment issue. I think what we need to focus on now is the what next, and I don't mean who's playing left back against Rangers in the Cup. What now in terms of the AGM? What has to change? Because for me, it's all about leadership. We're showing no leadership. Can you imagine a CEO of a company going through what we've just done with regards to the Kairat Almaty, the disastrous transfer window, the uprising of the fans, meeting with the fans, and it not going to plan?
Yep.
And he still not came out publicly and spoken.
Well, we talk about we've talked about the fact that Dermot Desmond effectively functions as an owner, despite the fact he's not, despite the fact he has got a 30+% shareholding, right?
34.7.
34.7, right? So not an owner, but he's acting like an owner. Well, that's fine. Look, if he wants to take on that role, you have to take ownership, right? If you're the owner or de facto owner, you have to take ownership, and that means not just owning the success and taking all the plaudits for having a strong financial model and
The champagne in the dressing room shot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to also own the failures. You have to own the things that haven't gone so well. And all the things we've listed so far, I didn't hear many successes in there. No. They were not positives. They're failures. Any business would look at those failures, they would do a self-assessment and said, how do we prevent these from becoming a recurring theme? How do we prevent these from occurring again? What steps do we have to take? So I want to see that from the AGM. I want to see acknowledgement that they've failed, because we don't seem to get that. We don't get anybody putting their head above the parapet, to quote Jim Orr, and saying, we got this wrong. This has not been good enough. I want to see accountability in terms of change. I want to say, okay, the structure as is not working. Now, like I said, I would never call for someone to lose their job, but frankly, if we didn't perform in our job and we had amassed that amount of failures, we'd be out of a job, right? That's the hard, cold, harsh reality of it. So we want to see change that is actually meaningful and tangible, and we can see that it will make a positive impact further down the line. That's what you need to see for the AGM. That's what I want to see. It's not what I think I'm going to see.
The only way you're going to see that though, Chris, and you don't want to say it, but I will, is you're going to have to change people within positions at football clubs. 100%.
Absolutely.
This is not going to change unless the people in the positions have to change.
People create the culture, and the culture has to change.
And it's like an echo chamber, and we spoke about it for years, years probably.
Literally years.
It's painful.
The thing is, I'm sorry to cut in, right? So hold that thought. We have spoken about it for years. We've been criticised for speaking about it. But what I said time and time again, and I don't mean us in this room, Celtic fans can smell the BS miles before the media smell it. Miles before the board can smell it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happened back in the 1980s and it's happening again.
And we get called entitled because we can see the problems even while we're winning. Even when we're successful last season.
Why are you complaining?
Why are you complaining? Yeah, look how many trophies he's won. Entitled. You know, we get accused of all that, but you can see the trajectory, to use that word, of how the club's operating and where we're headed. And that's the most frustrating thing, that we can all see it. But as you said, until there's actually change within the people that are running the club, there won't be, because there won't be any meaningful change in terms of what we're seeing on the pitch. And yeah, I think, look, in terms of even just short-term stuff, next week we've got the cup semi against Rangers. I think this could be a potential tipping point. You know, if things don't go well there, you can imagine how toxic things will be. Is there a point then things will have to change, even just in terms of manager? God knows, but hopefully it doesn't get to that in terms of.
Yeah.
But I just feel like we're at a real kind of tipping point here, where things can go really, really quickly, horribly wrong. AGM, when is it?
It's not actually been announced, which in itself is quite unusual, right? Because at this point, every single season, bar the COVID season, it had been announced the date. So we reckon it'll be in November, because it normally is in November. I'm going to be a wee bit more bold than you. You're too nice. Right. I reckon what needs to change, right, is some of the positions need to change, right?
I think you're right. I think
The
you're right.
chairman has to step down. 100%. The chairman has to step down, or announce that he's stepping down, and at least 2 members of the board have to be emptied, to use Brendan Rodgers' term. We need to, as a fan base, be given the vision of what they're going to do in terms of recruitment, because at the moment it's not working. They can sit in a room and say that it's functioning. It's not.
No.
It ain't working. Shin Yamada is not the answer, right? And it's not personal on one individual player. Nope. Because I could have said Marvin Compere first time around, or Marian Sved first time around. This is what we've done. The club has meddled in transfers. I listed them last week. They've meddled in transfers since Gordon Strachan's time, right? We can't have non-football people meddling in football business. They need to look after the pounds and the pence.
Yes.
And the football guys, the football team, the department,
Look after the
they'll
football
look after the football. So that needs to happen, right? And see if it doesn't, then see this atrophy we're talking about, that's going to continue.
Yes.
And we could be looking down the barrel at someone else winning this league beyond the 2 teams for Glasgow.
Yeah.
And for me, I was asked this week if that would be embarrassing for Celtic. I'll tell you what, that's a lack of respect for a team like Hearts
Yes.
and their fan base. I'm no fan of Hearts, absolutely not, right? And their fan base, no, it's not embarrassing. It's not embarrassing. It's a wake-up call for Celtic, that all that stuff we've been moaning about and entitled about is coming home to roost, Asim.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a wake-up call, because you're right. I've kind of been on the socials since the Hearts defeat, and maybe just in the heat of the moment, but, you know, saying Hearts won't be top of the league by the end of the year, and maybe it's just
Bookmark.
I know.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just been so programmed, and maybe I'm guilty of that kind of, not complacency, but it's just, we've not seen anything obviously tangible from other teams for so long that you're almost just like, they'll fall away, they'll fall apart. I'm still, and I'll stand by it, I'm still more concerned about Rangers in terms of they're only 5 behind us, despite the most shocking start to a season they've ever had, yet they're only 5 behind us. That's still my main concern. And again, people might shoot me down and say, no, I respect everything that Hearts are doing. Just my own personal opinion, I don't think they'll see it throughout a season, just because certain players within that squad may not have the mentality. That's not to say, obviously, we're not in a position to be belittling Hearts at the moment.
No.
But your point's true. And the other thing just to touch on as well is, from a fan's point of view, I know you've kind of been behind a lot of it as well in terms of the collective and stuff, but the Not Another Penny campaign, I think that's a good way. You know, there's been a lot of talk about boycotts and what fans can do, and what, you know, not attending games and stuff. But I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people, not to attend games. You know, myself included. As much as there's so much frustration there, I'm still there week in, week out. But the Not Another Penny, we have to hit them where it hurts. And I think that's where the power of the Celtic fan base is. We contribute so much financially, and obviously that's all they seem to care about. If we can hurt them there, whilst maybe in the short term it might hurt the club's accounts, but for the long-term gain, that's probably what's needed.
Yeah, Chris, what about yourself? Because I know you don't like to say sack him, sack that. We cannot operate and function to our maximum potential or anywhere near it with the people within the boardroom who are currently
look,
draw huge wages, some of them.
well,
Not all of them.
I was going to say it kind of skews us
all of
a blow a little bit, right? When look, I've been fortunate enough to be up at Celtic Park in my capacity with an ACSOM. I've been fortunate enough to be there as a fan. I've met some fantastic people, right from the
You never send that invoice in, by the way.
I don't know. No. But the people who, you know, even from the nice lady who greets me as walk in the stadium, you know, lovely, to the tour guides, there are some fantastic, hard-working, great people at Celtic Park. But what we're talking about is they're in roles that they are best suited for. They're in roles that they are very, very good at. There are people at that club making huge decisions and getting paid huge sums of money to make those decisions who are not fit for purpose. They do not have the requisite qualifications, experience or capability for the role. Now, what I want to see is cultural change. And unfortunately, cultural change happens largely when you change the personnel. You bring in fresh ideas, you bring in diversity of thought, you bring in innovation, initiative. That's what happens, right? All I mean is I would never look for or take pleasure in someone losing their job, but it's a necessity. It's a necessity when you're not performing your job
Celtic
to
means
the
more to
level
me
that
than
is
that.
required. Yes,
It is a necessity
Yes.
for Celtic to be a success.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, right? If you can't bring success to the club, I'm sorry, give someone else the opportunity to do so.
You want
And
them
someone
sacked?
will qualify.
You want them sacked?
That's
So
what
get-
you're saying.
let me say it.
Yeah,
Just
no, right.
get the graphic up. Chris said, right, CEO out, CFO out.
But I agree. I'm similar to you, Paul. John. It has to be now. Like we seen it last time. They got rid of Mark Law. He was the kind of fall guy for the issues last time in the transfer window 2 years ago. This time nobody's taking the hit.
Yeah.
Whether it'll be Paul Tillsdale and they'll use him as it, but it has to be bigger than that. And you're right. The chairman has to go. But I just don't see it happening. That's the issue. I just don't see that happening. So as much as that's what needs to happen, is what we want. How do we ensure that is the case?
This comes back to leadership, doesn't it? And there's such a lack of leadership at
Yep.
Celtic. We need to know the future of Brendan Rodgers going into January. We need to know.
Dermot Desmond needs to be at that AGM.
He does.
He does.
100% agree with you. He does. If he wants to go around the golf course saying he's the owner of Celtic, behave like an owner.
Yep.
Don't phone it in.
Yep.
He needs to be there, and he needs to be challenged as well. But he needs to be challenged with people at the club. Others, big shareholders at the club, should be saying to him and saying, actually, you don't own this. You're not going to be appointing managers in showers at Hampden, by the way, because from what I'm hearing, it wasn't Peter Lowell that did that. You're not going to be signing players for managers. All you are is a very, very rich man with 34.7% of Celtic shareholders.
Yes.
They don't own the club.
The people who are running the club should be the chief executive officer, the financial officer, and we need people running the football operations side. We need people in there that are qualified to do that job. And part of that is not only managing everything around you, right, and getting the other right people under you in place, it's also managing upwards. It's also saying to maybe the guy who thinks he's de facto owner, no, sorry boss, that's not the right thing for this club. You need people with the greatest respect, you need people with balls to do that. I don't think we've got the balls in that boardroom.
The chutzpah. The thing as well with Desmond is you've got, especially when it becomes worrying and the emotions run high, you've got to say, well, you know, there has been good things done. And he has, although he shouldn't be appointing managers, he has appointed a few decent managers. Yeah. My concern would be if Rodgers was to go right full circle back to the first question about Rodgers' future, I don't trust that the board would be able to find somebody, right?
No.
And it would be left to Dermot Desmond again. So the one thing we don't want is for him to have the control, yet he would be given the control due to the ineffectiveness and incompetence of the board. So it would be like, get your Rolodex out, and we're talking Robbie and Roy Keane. We're talking Damien Duff. That's the type, you know, Andrei Shevchenko is still going to be in the mix.
Get your applications in, right? It's just...
The only caveat to that or defence is if you look at the last few managers, we obviously Brendan, Ange, Brendan, but we were linked with Eddie Howe as well, and very strongly linked, and almost got him. So it almost feels like in terms of the managers, at least the last few that we've been linked with or got, we made the right choices. We all thought Brendan was the right choice to come back this time, and despite not being fancied at all by any of us at the start, proved to be a very good manager for us. And obviously Brendan
felt lucky though.
felt lucky,
But
you almost give him a wee bit of credit because it was on the back of nearly getting Eddie Howe, who's a very good manager.
Point.
So it seems like from the manager point of view, we've not had a shocker in a while, other than the reappointment of Lennon, which again you could argue wasn't a shocker until the COVID season. He did well in the year before, so you'd like to hope that But again, it does feel like they work out a lot of times, doesn't it?
The confidence is just not there.
Yeah, they've not earned
There's a solid process behind it. And like I say, with Ange, it felt lucky. But I agree, Eddie Howe would have been a good profile. I think we were all behind that at one point. We thought that's actually a good appointment. But
It's only when things get disastrous they almost seem to then
pull out of the fire. Yeah.
huck a real bit. Brendan, the first time after the cup semi against Rangers, then after the horrid COVID season, they were linked with Eddie Howe, nearly got him, but then got in. It seems like things need to get really bad before they then.
Martin O'Neill after John Barnes.
It's before you operate as a big football club, and we should be operating as a big football club every single day.
Yes.
Well, gentlemen, I absolutely loved that discussion. Great to see you again, Asim. Absolutely
be back.
fantastic to see you again. Thanks for joining us again on Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
Thanks again for joining us on A Celtic State of Mind. Join us next Friday at 6 o'clock for This Is ACSOM.